everyone. Welcome to the Femtell All podcast. My name is Madison Bellissimo.
And I'm Ruth Devereaux.
We're so happy you're here.
We're happy you're here.
And today's episode is about perfectionism, which is a long time coming for us. I feel like...
Yeah. We've talked about it, I think, in spurts and maybe in moments, but I think we wanted to cover the overall topic because I think we all struggle with this. This isn't just even a woman issue. This is like a people issue. I think we all push ourselves to a place where we feel like we're constantly failing because we feel like we're not achieving that level of perfectionism that maybe we've set out for ourselves.
100%.
I know. I personally, I feel it all the time.
Oh, yeah, me too. I have my brother's voice in my head all the time. That's like, ain't you tired? Ain't you? And I'm like exhausted.
Yes.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I would say for both of us, like, it's so funny. I don't find it as obvious with you like at all, but it's because I know you well.
Yeah.
I know that the underbelly is that.
Yeah.
But like, no, I think to the outside perspective, people would be like, she's very well grounded. She doesn't feel any insecurities about herself.
Oh my God. I wish.
Yeah.
I think that we often have that point of view from the people from the outside, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, but we all struggle on the inside. I constantly second guess myself. I constantly feel like I'm failing. I'm not doing what I could be doing, or if I even give myself a day of rest, I'm like, God, you wasted that day. Like, yeah.
Oh my God. This is going to be a good episode now. Yeah, that's fucked.
It's hard. And it's like, where is that balance of like being driven, being a go-getter, and like being successful or fighting for a success, but still allowing yourself to rest? And this actually brings up a good note that when me and Neil went to that conference not too long ago, this scientist was there, but he's like a scientist for sports medicine. Mm-hmm. And he said that you would think some of the top athletes would be the ones that are just constantly driving and going and going and going. And he said that actually they're the ones that know how to balance work and rest. And because your body has to rejuvenate.
Not a professional football player. No, it's
you
true.
missed your calling as a linebacker. Is that a word? Is that
linebacker's funny. That's very funny. But yeah, holy shit. I mean, the math is mathing.
Yeah.
Like we have to recover.
We have to.
Even if you're like now that I'm like a Pilates girly, and I have been for like almost a year now.
Yeah, you've been super consistent.
But,
it's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But, sometimes when I'm like, the other day I had 2 classes booked back to back because I have my favorite instructor that I go to that I'm like, I love going to her class because she kicks my ass every time. And my mom was like, why are you going 2 days in a row? And I was like, because she's teaching. I need to go to her class. I was like, I'm going to the classes I like. And she was like, you have to give yourself a rest day. I was like, I will rest the 2 days after that.
Yeah.
Like, and at first I was like, Mom, but I'm like, she's right. Like they're like, even though I feel capable and sometimes obviously you do need to self-audit and know your threshold. Like Absolutely. If you can work out 5 days a week, do it. Fuck yeah. Like be a fucking beast. Yeah. But I think if you're like, also working, also trying to meditate, also trying to have a relationship, also having a friendship, also, this laundry list of things that we try to accomplish in our life and keep going. Yeah.
I think that's really what it is too, right? It's not so much like, okay, like if you can do it, but like it's the not guilting yourself if you can't. Mm-hmm. I think that's really where the negative comes in. Like it's not, okay, if you, because I do feel there's a level of like, yes, push yourself, like do what you can, go out there and fight for the body that you want, the career that you want, the relationship that you want. But if you can't, because you can't balance certain things, like the guilt that we often feel like, I feel like I'm failing because I wasn't able to do the 1 million things I put on my list to do. Or I can do them, but I'm not doing them at the level at which I wish I could do them.
I want to perform at. Yeah. And like, wose fault is that? Like not in like a, not to be, I'm like the mirror. Hi, mirror. Maddie, nice to meet you. But it's true. It's like when you overboard yourself sometimes and you can't, that's where it's like, okay, maybe I do want to keep all of these things on my plate, but that requires that on the weekends, I am completely
taking at least a day.
Yeah. Like MIA for this day. I'm not on social media. I'm not trying to hang out with all of my friends. Like I unfortunately have to say, I was just having this conversation with a friend the other day where I was like, sometimes you have to be, it feels like you're being an asshole to take care of yourself sometimes, but like I really struggle. I've said this on the podcast before. It continues. I struggle with my sleep schedule. That is something. I'm a healthy girly.
You are, yeah.
Like one of my, I think, like identities is that I really care about my health.
You do, yeah.
I feel like a lot of people in my life know that. Like they know I'm really good about what I put in my body, the things I interact with my body, how I like everything. I'm very, very particular about I. However, you give me a 2 a.m. bedtime and I'm like, cool, I'll be up at 8:30, you know, working at 8:30, you know, and I'm like, oh, that's not sustainable. And it hasn't been sustainable. And I've been doing it for so long now that it just kind of feels second nature. And I'm so badly want to get out of this, this loop, you know, because I've created it myself, you know, and now I'm on the schedule.
What's creating the loop? Like, what are you thinking? Like, what's making you, are you like when you should be maybe sleeping in more because you went to bed late? Is it like the guilt of knowing like you have things to do?
No, I have too much to do that I can't sleep in, first of all. And then second of all, so I should be going to bed later, right? Or earlier, excuse me. So that is something that I've come into consideration. But like even the other night, I was getting ready for bed. And I was like getting ready for bed so early. Like I randomly, like all of my friends were busy. I was busy like doing stuff during the week. So I was like, oh my God, like my family's out of town. I was like, wow, I can it's
rest.
10 p.m. I can get ready. She's getting ready for bed. I'm like winding down. And Noah calls me. And I hadn't talked to Noah in like a week. She had been gone. And I was like, I'm obviously, there was no consideration of whether I'm going to answer or not. Yeah. But then I talked to her for like fucking 2 hours. And I'm just like, and even though I don't regret a minute of that, I would do that every night for the rest of my life if that meant I have 4 hours of sleep. That don't get it twisted. I love this woman, but I'm like, God damn it. If I would, you know, and she's close enough. She's one of my best friends that if I would have been like, yo, dude, I'm gonna be fucking for real with you. I need to sleep. Like, I'm not necessarily tired right now, but I
need to wind my brain down. I need to do it.
Like, cause if I don't, and thankfully I did all of my skincare. Usually I'll just chat. Cause I'm like, it will be over soon. Yeah. But I knew us well enough that I was like, start your fucking skincare while you're talking to her. You can do all of this. You can do your red light therapy laying in bed talking to her. You know? And I did all of it, but I still went to bed like my usual time. It wasn't later.
What's interesting about it is the shame cycle. Yeah. It's because like we do things that we were like, okay, like I wish I would do it this way, but we continually do it the other way. But then we also like beat ourselves for it when we do it, and then happens all over again. Like I wonder what that is, because I do it myself in certain factors. Like I notice myself being like, God, why'd you do that? What, you got to do this now. You got to do this. And I don't do it, but I will consistently beat myself up internally
over that. Yeah. I mean, well, and I think it's a great question. I don't know the answer of why we do it, but it is a funny thing, because then I also think there's a healthy dose of us not giving ourselves credit for when we are doing the things, right? Or like the things that we are consistently doing. Like if 80% of your to-do list you do every week on the week, like on the money.
Oh, that's such a good point too.
Because I'm like, we do that a lot, you know, and I'm like, but at the end of the day, the thing I'm thinking about is not like, wow, well, you fed yourself every day. You know, you did work out. Yeah. You did see your friends. You did see your family. You got femtol was all accounted for. Like, you know, thinking about all those things, but I'm thinking about the fucking 6 nights, which is excessive, but the 6 nights this week that I didn't get great sleep. Right. And I'm like, you fucking asshole, you know, like, and it's that negative self-talk that like, thank God therapy is coming to, you know, but I wonder why we harp on the things I know that, and they typically are the most, not the most difficult as far as like skill or challenge level, but the most challenging for us, right? Yeah. Like what's most challenging for you? And you're going like,
that's such a good point. Like I keep thinking of like, because I feel like both of us we have good habits, but I think once those habits are established, like you don't recognize them. Yeah. And then you also don't notice the upward movement from them, because like growth is always like so small, like until you look back 5 years and go, wow, like look where I was 5 years ago till now. That in the daily, it's more so like, oh, I'm failing. I'm doing this. Like, I'm not doing this right. Like, oh, I don't like this about myself. Like, but it's never just like, but look at how much you've grown. Look at how much you're doing. Look at how much you are balancing. Look at how much like greatness you're putting into the world versus like the hours of sleep that I'm missing.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And you're right. Like, I think that back to the shame spiral or shame cycle, so to speak, that almost perpetuates it continuing because you're going like, well, see, you're almost making, we make promises to ourselves and we make agreements with ourselves where you're trying to keep that promise to yourself. And when you don't consistently keep that promise to you, you're an unreliable narrator to yourself, right? Like, Maddie doesn't have a great sleep schedule. I know that, like, because I don't, and even though I'm fully capable of that. And like, if I book a, commercial or something like that, and I know I'm doing that and I get ample sleep because I know I have to be on set at like 6 a.m. or something like that, I make that work. Like, we always make it work. However, I'm not doing it consistently enough. So I'm like, I've almost tricked myself into thinking I'm not capable of doing a consistent sleep schedule. And it's hard because the perfectionism comes in because someone goes, well, you're doing all of this and you look like you're doing great and you are really healthy. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's all well and great, but my sleep schedule,
I mean, the great thing is if you think about it comparatively to what other people might be struggling on fixing, like, you are doing so many things great. That the one thing your mind is going to that you're not is like is good, is important.
Yes, it's big.
But
huge.
It's not like
a drug problem.
Yeah.
And no shame to that. I'm not saying that that's like, and like, oh, you're worse than me. But I think it is something to the health degree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, I could be doing way worse things for my health or for my well-being or for others' well-being. 100% sleep. It's like the big bad wolf. Like, what?
Sure,
well, But then I think about it. I do spiral in the way of like, well, what is the long-term health effects? And I don't know. Like, I'm young and I'm spry, so I'm able to go off of fucking 6 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep, and wake up and work and then just fucking do it all over again. But I'm like, there's so much studies specifically on sleep. And we're not, this episode's not on sleep, I promise. I'm sorry, guys. But like, just for example, that I'm like, there are so many studies that are like, if you're not resting, like you were talking about that professional athlete, if you don't make time for that, how are you able to operate at your 100%? You're maybe operating at 90% every time. And that's better than most people, but it's still 90% of your 100. And this episode is not to promote being at your 100 at all times. Like, I think it's quite the opposite. But I think what we are pointing out is when you focus on being 110% all the time and you're trying to do it and you can't accomplish it and it takes you down to a consistent 90%, like, you're really more harming yourself than doing yourself good by striving for excellence across the board. No room for rest, no room for growth, no room for putting something down. You set yourself up for
unrealistic like expectations. Absolutely. But I think like when you do that too, like you're more bound to go into those shame spirals of like oh, like you're not good enough, you're not this, you're not that. Whereas like we talk about being kind to the world so much and the people around us, but like being kind to ourselves as well is so important. And also for the longevity of this ride that is trying to get to whatever those goals are. You're not that can't happen if you're continuously like faulting yourself for any like misstep.
100%.
And I always talk about, I think I spoke about this in the past on podcast too, about like when we're constantly looking for the right door, even if you take one wrong door, you're going to find it eventually. I was actually even talking to my producing partner this week when we were on set, and he was saying like how he felt like after anything that bad happened in his life, something great came of it. And I was telling him, I'm like, I don't know if that's necessarily because like that bad thing led to the great thing. I think when you're looking for the great thing, you'll find it. So I think that that's us too. And I think it's so many of the people that we're around, when you are that person that's like, I'm going to stay positive and I'm going to keep moving forward. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, and I'm saying this knowingly, like that I do it to myself. Like, I get mad at myself. I beat myself up. I feel like I'm failing consistently. But if I talk to myself the way I talk to other people, I'm going to tell myself like, you're trying.
Yeah,
like
you're trying.
Every day you're trying. Every day you're putting as much in as you can. And that's all you can do. And mistakes are bound to happen. Missteps are bound to happen. But I also feel like I've learned so much from my mistakes, and I wouldn't have learned it. I don't learn. Some people learn by hearing, whereas I learned more by doing. And so I feel like a lot of times I have to have those mistakes for the mistake to really set in my brain.
For you to really process it. Fair. I think you're not alone.
Yeah.
I think, I learned by doing too. I definitely source information and I can learn from other people's mistakes. But I think a lot of the time I do learn the most from my mistakes. And they're usually small things too.
Yeah.
When we say mistakes, it's not this like huge, like,
I've had huge mistakes.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying it's not like you let your whole people down.
Yeah.
It's not earth shattering in that way. It might be a big fuck up.
Yeah.
But it's not like, well, that changes the composition of Ruth.
Sure,
You are not less than because you made a mistake.
That's
you are
true.
not,
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I've been seeing this a lot lately and it's challenging my thinking, and I think for good. Do you think that there is a right decision when you're making decisions?
Ooh. That's a good question. I think it's maybe some circumstances.
I'm like, yes. But I'm like, no. Like, obviously, like I can macro.
Like, I think it depends on the decision. Like, so I think in some factors there probably is. There's probably some very clearly laid out, like, this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do. But in most decisions, I would say there's not a clear yes and no.
Yeah. Well, I think because it's a decision. Like, the right decision is making a decision instead of being... That's what I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, like, lead you there. But I'm like, that's what I've been exposing myself to more of, just like, okay, like... Because I think with perfectionism, I don't want to speak on everyone, but my experience with perfectionism is sometimes a numbness or, like, an inability to... move forward on certain things, whether that be a project, whether that be a relationship, whether that be starting a new diet, starting a new workout, and you're like, well, I can't do this. Starting a avid sleep schedule, you're like, well, I can't do it until it's perfect, right? I can't do it until all the stars align. And I think sometimes... Not all the time. Progression. It does. But I think sometimes if you're able to just make a decision and make a step forward, because even if it's a step to the side, maybe it's lateral, whatever, you're at least pushing it forward. And even if it is a misstep, you at least know that step is gone and you're going, okay, I learned from that. Now I can now make this step. One
of our mutual friends, I tell them that all the time. I'm like, I feel like you consistently make lists and you keep talking about what you want to do and you need like everything to be perfect to make that step forward. But that's not how it happens. Like, you don't do anything at that point. Like, you have to like just move forward, and especially in a creative space, mistakes actually lead to more creativity where it kind of evolves into something else.
Because you have to be creative and problem solve, right? Yeah, instead of it just being like laid out for you perfectly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes like you can speak on producing. Like sometimes the shot that you're like, that was never gonna work is the best shot of the film or the like the music video, and you're like, wow, didn't realize that. And or like I can remember jobs that I didn't book that I was like, I was so perfect for that role, and jobs that I didn't book where I'm like, but it also like it led to this job, or I was able to go on vacation with my family because of that, or I was able to work on my own stuff because I wasn't booking. I was like, okay, I'm going to start writing a TV show and I'm going to meet one of my best friends. Inherently, I didn't know that, but those missteps do
create a beautiful life.
Yeah, or like different directions even. Like, I don't even think I wouldn't even call them a full misstep. Like, I think it's just a new direction. So sometimes making a decision for the fellow perfectionists out there, I don't know if you guys are probably cursing my name at this point, like, why the fuck did I listen to this episode? But I think I'm trying to teach myself that's okay, and that not everything is always going to be perfect. Not everything is going to be so pristinely clean and like no mistake, no, even this podcast, we're learning as we're going. And, and when I talk to people about it, a lot, obviously, thankfully, people think that we're very professional with this, which we are. I'm not trying to false advertise here.
We are.
But I do, it's so funny when people are like, oh, well, what's the long-term goal? And I'm like, well, this is this, and this. But I'm like, we've already made adjustments within our goals from when we started in August,
absolutely,
And I'm like, and for better, like I would say all for the better. And there's been things that we've been like, oh, we didn't realize we were going to run into these things. I'm like, now I know how to fucking mix now. You know, like I didn't know how to do that, you know? And I think it's just going about life and going about scenarios in your head that you feel like are supposed to play out a certain way, and maybe taking that ego out of it and going like, hey,
I'll tell you one thing that like I think I struggle that falls under this umbrella. I hate it if I think people don't like me or are mad at me. It's really hard for me. Like, and I like obsess over it, especially like sometimes I'll even think of something. I'm like, I haven't heard from them in a while. Are they mad at me? Did I do something?
Yeah.
And that's really like, I struggle with that a lot. And like that really opposes even my career path, because even like in dealing with a lot of people on set and like in having to tell people what to do, and like not everybody's going to like you or think that you're a nice person. I struggle with that. And so like I had a moment recently where I was just like, I thought I saw that person had like a weird look for me, and like they must not like me. And like I thought about it a little bit too long, and I had to remind myself, I'm like, I can't control that.
Yeah.
I can't control how somebody's like, I'm never mean to people. I'm
No,
never like,
God, no.
yeah, I always enter any situation. I'm always trying to be the kindest person I can be.
Yeah.
But and if somebody doesn't like me or doesn't like who I am, like I don't need to know it, for one. If they're not coming straight at me and saying anything, like I don't need to know it, and I have to let go of the thought of it.
Sure.
And so that was something that came up for me recently that I think a lot of people struggle with, and like we can consume ourselves with.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And you felt that on set, or like
it was like afterwards I was like, I think that they think this.
Yeah. And you're like, and it's horrible when you like feel like they think something that you're like is so inherently not you, right? Like you're obviously like one of the kindest people. So it's like if you thought that they thought that you weren't kind, you're like, I'm really kind.
I know, like I'm a nice person.
Yeah, you want to like yell it from the rooftops, but that is so hard. And just being like not liked, but like facing that potential of someone. I think a lot of perfectionists deal with that fear of being like, oh, they didn't like me, or I'm not being
or they don't think I'm smart, or they didn't think that I'm like capable. Like
that's hard for me. That's I will say that is one of the hardest things for me. Is I feel I have I don't know if it's ego, insecurity. I think it's a mix of all of them. But I think if I ever get the impression that someone doesn't think I'm smart, it rubs me the wrong way. And then instead of like me being angry and being like, no, duh, I'm smart enough, like I can hold my own. I go like, I invert to like, well, what's the proof in the pudding? You have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Musical Theater. What is that? You know, and
you
it's
start
like,
questioning and putting yourself down.
And then I'm like, well, I did say that word weird once.
Right.
You know, and you're like, oh, so they think I'm illiterate, you know, and you're just like, it doesn't, everyone makes mistakes and stuff like that. But it's, and I think a lot of the time I experience that more with men, that I feel like men don't always, and I think they're more like,
oh, wow.
And I'm like,
good on you.
I'm like, oh, I'll fucking, I'm like, do not treat me like a fucking, or if they're like, wow, you were right. And they're like surprised that I was right about something. I'm like, yeah, fucking Google it. I dare you. Because I'm also like, if I'm wrong, I want to know. I don't have an ego about that.
I want to learn.
Yeah. But I was having a conversation with one of my best friends the other day. So you guys decipher who that is, but and they were thinking about setting me up with someone, and I was like, oh, really? And the person though is getting their PhD, and the person that they're trying to set me up with, this man, has kind of alluded to he wouldn't date anyone that didn't have their PhD.
Oh.
And I was like, well, first of all, I don't know if I'm all that interested in dating someone who feels that way. And I think, again, it's more of a ignorance, funny enough, there. Of like someone feeling like I can't date someone that doesn't have the same degree as me, or type of degree, I should say. But it was a really ugly feeling that I got where I was just like, why would anyone equate that to like my worth as like a partner?
I've met a ton of people that are overly educated, like, and have so many different degrees and are dumb as fuck. Like, I'm sorry, they are. Like, they can read a book and they can memorize information. That does not equate intelligence for me.
100%. And that's where it's like I do have to.
No shade. But I love
check
yourself at the door.
No, check yourself. And I had a moment where I'm like, no, I'm smart enough to like have a conversation and like, you know,
well beyond that. Like, come on.
Thank you. But I was just like, woo, that created some insecurity for me for a second, for sure. And not that this person even knows me. It wasn't like they were referencing me when they were saying I don't want to date someone that doesn't have like a PhD or isn't getting their PhD. But I was just like, you don't fucking know. You know, like I was just like, you don't fucking know what kind of like conversation I could hold with you.
No, absolutely.
And so all of that to say, I think we get in our own way sometimes of like letting those insecurities come in, and sometimes it is a very positive influence because it's like, well, let me show them. Yeah. But I think sometimes it gets in the way of us not feeling enough in some way. And I think a lot of perfectionists probably, at the end of the day, if you ask them, are you enough? I think that would be a hard answer for them.
Are you enough?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. But I'm not like, yes. Yeah. You know, like I like, yes. Objectively, when I like go, how people view me, like people's perception of me, yes, I think I'm enough. But then but then I'm not enough for me sometimes where I'm like, no, but I need. But a different question that I think also perfectionists struggle with is like, are you worthy of love? And I do feel very worthy of love. So that's where we all have our strengths.
I'll fight you.
We have our strengths and our weaknesses, but that is something that's very clear to me that I'm like, no, everyone deserves love, you know? Yeah. But then I think the enough question is like, well, what's enough for you? You know, it's like I think I don't go to like, what's my opinion of what's enough? Even though I'm saying I don't feel enough for me. I do. The first one I check is like, well, do I think I'm enough for other people? Does any of that resonate with you?
I agree with you. I feel I'm worthy of love. I feel like I give love.
Good. We're doing something good
here. We're moving. We're growing.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Let me just get you before.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. She's giving the free goodies.
Yeah, sorry. Okay.
No, beautiful. You look great. Wardrobe malfunction taken care of.
Good thing I wore a bra.
Yeah.
Am I enough?
Yeah.
I don't know yet.
Really?
Yeah. What? I feel like I'm still like.
Yeah. You don't know if you're enough?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry you feel that way, first and foremost, because you are so clearly enough and all that in a bag of chips. But what?
I think it's the struggle, right? It's the internal struggle of like, am I enough? Am I showing the world that I'm enough? Am I giving enough? And what if what I have to give isn't enough?
What do you think would be showing the world that you're enough?
I think it'd be receiving recognition, and that's what makes it hard because it's like it's so outside of yourself. Yeah.
So like accolades, like or
even
some
verbal or like that's why I think when we talk about like we're such like
verbal affirmation.
Yeah. But I think that I struggle with if I'm not getting it from people around me, then it's like it's almost like a monster, right? Like if you're not consistently receiving it. Then it's like dying in the corner. Like it's like I think that's what I because I know I need it from the external. I know that I'm struggling with it internally because I shouldn't need it externally if I've confirmed that in myself internally.
Sure, you feel like if you have had more confirmation that you're enough to yourself that you wouldn't
other people to tell me that.
The outside external validation.
And that's like would be my goal. I would want to get to the point of like saying like being so confident in what I'm giving that I don't need anybody to tell me, whereas like I'm still in that stage where I'm like, no, I need to hear it, otherwise I question everything.
I think you're not alone. Thank you for sharing that. It makes me, I'm conflicted right now. I'm sorry. It's because as your friend, there's a whole part of me that wants to like shake you and be like, are you fucking insane? You know, and not in a derogatory way, but in a like, how could you be so misled that you're not enough in this scenario, in this world, in anyone's eyes, even if they were just meeting you for the first time, let alone someone who knows you wholly, you know? That's heartbreaking to me. But then there's also a big part of me that's like, it feels societal. It feels like we're so set up for failure and we're so set up for like loss and like, we're set up to lose. Like we are set up to be like, well, like everything about media and everything about competition and about like everything that we value, like is so accolade based. It's so accomplish based. Yeah. It's not like, are you a really good friend? Yeah, you know, like people aren't meeting you for the first time being like, tell me about your friend group. You know, they're like, what do you do for a job? Yeah. Oh, cool. And then they're like, what car do you drive? Yeah. What do you like? You know, it's like these weird markers of like you made it or success or like you're doing well for yourself.
It's so true. Right? I think it's very prevalent more so in cities like LA. Because so many people have so many like things. Yeah, material. It's just things. Yeah, like it's not like anything like it should be like, how do you feel about yourself? And that should be something you should wear on your sleeve and feel like, oh, like I got to this point because it's not easy.
Yeah. How do you treat your mom? Yeah. You know, like, those are the things that should kind of matter more. Yeah. Like, do you volunteer? Do you do you put your cart back out? At the grocery store?
Yeah.
You know?
I always do, by the way.
I do too.
I always put my cart back.
That's a fucking big red flag.
I don't understand. It's 2 feet away.
I know.
They have them everywhere. Like literally walk it back.
Thank you so much. You're like truly like probably the first person that feels as strongly.
Really?
About it. Yeah. I brought this up to many people and most people agree, but some people are like, I've had people that are like, oh no, I don't put my cart back. And I'm like,
do they like, here's the thing too, that's so selfish. It's like, it's such a short walk just to put it away. And like cars are more likely to get hit by the ones that you're just leaving there. Yeah. You take up parking space, which is very limited in like a city like this. Like just put it away.
It's all it's all inconsiderate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, but like, those are the things that should matter at the end of the day. When we're thinking about perfectionism, when we're thinking about like, what's our optimal version of ourselves? Like, you know, I really want to challenge myself and us and others. Like, how much can we step away from it and go like, well, what is my legacy? Like, what am I like, if that's what I'm so worried about, like what kind of footprint I'm leaving behind? No one's going to give a fuck what car I drove. Not going to give a fuck how much money I left them in my will or whatever. Like, what people are going to remember is like how I spent their birthdays with them, like how we would cook together, like how, you know, like things like that that are so, that don't cost really any money. It costs effort. It costs support. It costs communication, connection. And being a good person, you know. And I think, you know, when we were asking earlier of like, is there a right and wrong decision? I agree with you. There's some where you're like, morally, it feels very black and white sometimes, but sometimes it's not, you know, it's more gray. But I think when we're saying good person, it's like, what do you define that as like a good person? And like when you've met people that are really like stand out, like really have made an impression on you, what have they done? How are they making you feel? So all of this to say, I think you are one of those people. And I'm so sorry that you feel otherwise or would feel that you need to prove yourself to others. But I'm like, at the end of the day, I know from my experience of Ruth Devereaux, not only my personal experience, but when I view it, when I see the people in your life, how you make people feel, you're not leaving them feeling some type of way. Like it is, you're always leaving them better than you found them, you know? And I think that it's heartbreaking to me because, you know, it's like you're not alone in it. You know, a lot of people at home probably would never think this about you. Maybe people that are directly close friends with you and people that like are maybe friends with me and know you by proxy that are like, I love Ruth, you know, and we're all like that. And I 100% have this moment and I go, am I stylish enough? Am I fit enough? Am I funny enough? Am I, you know, and
you are.
Thank you.
All of those things and more.
I do appreciate that. But I think I'm trying to lead all of us away, specifically myself, but all of us. Like, I want to challenge our thinking and being like, okay, well, we're obviously overthinkers if we're like going into the perfectionist route. Like, let's use that extra brain power to focus on things that, like, I don't know, kind of matter more. And you can define what that means to you. But for me, that is how you make people feel, and like how I make people feel, and how I, and yes.
I told you even the other night I ran into a girl that listens to our podcast, and she was saying, I want to meet Maddie. And like, it's like, even through this, like her feeling your energy through this, people like love you and what you bring.
Thank you for saying that. That's very sweet. I'd love to meet you. I want to meet all of you guys. And I'm glad that we're doing this, because I think even in my friend group that, like, I have so many friends that listen to the podcast. Thank you guys. You're the best.
We love you.
But it's funny. I have conversations with them out, like, when we're hanging out as friends. They're like, I listened to the podcast this week, and I'm like, tell me your thoughts, And I think having these conversations, like, I feel very close to these people, but I don't know if I would bring up perfectionism to them. I don't know if I would be like, we'd probably take a little anecdote, and we would say, like, a little aside of like, oh, you're a perfectionist too, me too, girl. Oh, that fucking sucks, right? And then you leave it at that, and it doesn't go into a deeper conversation like this, where you're going like, well, why do you feel not enough? Like, how can I make you feel more enough? And just being that support system to remind them of, like, the things that make them them, and, like, dare I say, when we are imperfect, we are our own perfect, like, not to be cliche, but we are our own perfect versions of ourselves. So
we are. What's it called? Imperfect perfect?
Imperfectly
perfect?
Imperfectly perfect. Yeah. And I think we all, should subscribe to that a little more.
I think so too. I completely agree with you.
Well, this was deep.
Thank you guys for joining in. And, like, we hope that you guys also question this in yourselves, and maybe if you're struggling with it, like, or you see your friends struggling, ask these questions and go a little bit deeper and understand, like, what they're dealing with and how to help them, like, be gentle on themselves, and for you to be gentle on yourself too. We all deserve kindness, and let's be kind to ourselves first before even anybody else. So thank you guys so much. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like. See, I messed up, and I'm going to give myself grace.
Yes, you are. Because it's hard every time she has to say that. I made her do the outro every time.
Oh, we thank you guys so much. We're so grateful you're here, and we'll see you next week on Femtell.
Bye.
Bye.